So, this story is about a week old, but I don't think many people actually realise that it was originally broken by the private eye. Because this is the first, at least the first story I saw it in, and a lot of people then, particularly in the mainstream, followed it on. So, we're going to follow what the private eye brought up in this. And this is, of course, that Jacob Rees-Mogg has moved his business to Dublin. Now, why would a hardline Brexiteer who claims that there's going to be all these amazing benefits of leaving the EU suddenly move his business to Ireland, to Dublin in particular, which is still in the EU? Bit bizarre that, but anyway, let's go through the story. So, hardline Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg has been prominent in resisting the Lord's amendment to the EU withdrawal bill that would keep the UK in the customs union. The Tory MP supports threatening to walk away with no deal if necessary to ensure that the UK leaves the EU. However, over at fund manager and his part-time employer Somerset Capital Management, or SCM, which he co-founded, there seems to be less conformity about Brexit. Never mind Rees-Mogg's cliff edge version. Far from excitedly eyeing investment prospects beyond the EU, SCM seems to firmly be in the Remain camp. Like many city banks, insurers and asset managers, SCM relies on passporting from the UK's and the EU's membership in order to sell to other EU countries. That could all come to an end with Brexit. EU chief negotiator Michael Barnier insists there will be no special deal, putting city firms at a big disadvantage. Moves to Paris, Frankfurt, Luxembourg and Dublin can get round that problem. No doubt this is why SCM has launched a new investment fund based in Dublin, a major fund management centre, even though that means submitting to Irish/EU laws and regulations. The IM Somerset Engineering Markets Dividend Growth Feeder Fund was launched in March by Somerset Capital Management, and ICAV, an Irish collective asset management vehicle, or an umbrella fund regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. All disputes as to the terms thereof shall be governed by and constructed in accordance with the laws of Ireland. So the ICAV sub-fund will feed a master fund, the 135 billion Somerset Emerging Markets Dividend Growth Fund, managed by London in Somerset Capital Management LLP, in which Rees-Mogg remains a prominent partner. He insists he does not make investment decisions. As the March prospectus makes clear, the feeder fund is subject to the Irish and EU regulatory framework applicable and collective investment schemes, administrators and trustees. As such, changes in governmental regulation, political structure, local economies and tax laws may adversely impact any or all of the foregoing. So much for taking back control of Europe. The prospectus goes on to spell out serious warnings about possible consequences of the considerable uncertainty before and after Brexit among the investment-specific risks. It states, as the manager and investment manager are based in the UK, and a fund's investment may be located in the UK or the EU, a fund may as a result be affected by the events described above. The impact of such events described above impact of such events on a fund is difficult to predict, but there are maybe detrimental implications for the value of certainty certain of the fund's investments or its ability to enter into transactions or to the value or to realise such investments. This may be due to, among other things, 1. Uncertainty or volatility in the UK and EU financial markets. 2. Fluctuations in the market value of the sterling and the UK and EU assets. And 3. Fluctuations in exchange rates between the sterling, the euro and other currencies. 4. Increased liquidity of investments located or listed within the UK or EU. And 5. The willingness of financial counterparts to enter into transactions or the price at which they are prepared to transact in relations to the management of a fund's investments, currency and other risks. The prospectus warns that it could get worse after Brexit, especially if the UK falls off the cliff edge despite Rees Mogg's rosy forecasts. Once the position of the UK and the arrangements which will apply to its relationship with the EU and other countries have been established, or if the UK ceases to be a member of the EU without having agreed on such arrangements or before such agreements become effective, the manager and investment manager or of the ICAV may need to be restructured. This may increase costs or make it more difficult for the ICVA to pursue its objectives. None of this would seem to bother Rees Mogg, however. But then the MP struggles to avoid accusations of hypocrisy when it comes to his public posturing and the company that makes him rich. Back in the March Eye, 1466 pointed out that Rees Mogg was telling his Twitter followers, "We must stand up to Russia." While the 150 billion MI Somerset Marketing Management's Dividend Growth Fund had almost 10% invested into Russian stocks. Lo and behold, this was rediscovered by the Mail on Sunday last month, that Russian stake has since shrunk to 8%, probably the result of the share price crash triggered by US sanctions against the Putin-linked oligarchs in April. But the fund still shows state-controlled and sanction-listed Sberbank among its top 10 investments. Rees Mogg is better placed than most, if not all, the new Irish fund investors to deal with the Brexit fallout. His private company, the Stallion, I think that's how you say it, owns 7 million in property and 1/3 of the Somerset Capital Management. With Dominic Johnson and Edward Robinson, the co-managers of the Emerging Markets Dividend Growth Fund, he is among, with them, a limited partner, designated member in Somerset Capital Management Programme, LLP, which runs the funds. Stallion and the SCML are also limited partners. So not much so to double as a treble bubble when it comes to sharing out the LLP's profits. These were 27.8 million for the year to March 2017, up to 18.3 million. The LLP's 20 members shared drawings of estimated 23.5 million compared with the 17.4 million in 2016 for the 18 members. Rees Mogg has declared in the Register of MPs' Interests a monthly stipend of £14,500 to £15,100 from the LLP. That's equivalent to £174,000 a year. So far this year, in return for 30 hours work a month, not making investment decisions, useful for funding the mortgage on his new 5.6 Westminster home. So this is what I've been talking about. Look, these guys who are preaching the Brexit and how wonderful it's going to be, these guys are rich, and Brexit is going to only make them more richer. And we're going to get onto something else probably in a later video about this, but again, that's for another time. But you can clearly see Rees Mogg this guy who is hailed as this hardliner Brexit champion is nothing the sort of. His company, the company that makes him rich, has moved to Ireland because he wants to avoid all the consequences of Brexit. And that's only going to make him more richer. So here you have a guy who says, oh, we should just walk away, just take that cliff edge road. And then his own company warns against this, and as a result, to protect against that, moves to Ireland. This is insane. This is such hypocrisy on a massive level. And I'm surprised that Brexiteers aren't furious with him. They should be. Because I thought this was about making Britain great again. Yet here is Jacob Rees-Mogg moving out a company to Ireland to avoid all this disaster which he has been pushing for years. So, yeah, that's literally all you've got to say on about it. He's a massive hypocrite. But then so are most of the other Brexiteers that we've been seeing recently massively backtracking on all their promises and predictions that they made. So, as we can see, it looks like the promised unicorn is nothing more than a horse with a tissue tube duct taped to his head, and it looks like that's now starting to fall off. And it looks like that people might actually be starting to realise that this promised unicorn is just a horse. Or as it becomes closer, it's really just a cow painted to look like a horse.